Let's find out what we got from the Romans, people we studied the whole second market period. First off, language. Romans, use Latin. Latin is the root of what a bunch of languages are called the Romance languages. In them are Spanish, French, Italian, Romanian, and Portuguese. Now, of course, we speak English, but England was conquered by the Romans, as we learned, so we have a lot of Latin. Let's just look at some examples. The Latin word pater is where we get the word father. The Spanish call it padre, or the French père. For Latin, the word nox is where we get the English word night, or in Spanish, noche, or French nuit. Can anybody think of a word that we get from nox that means night? I'll give you a hint. A bat is this type of animal. That's right, nocturnal. Now, bonus. It's a bonus question. Well, to us, bonus means extra, we think. But actually, it means good. It's a good question because it can't hurt you. If you get it wrong, it doesn't take any points. In Spanish, you get the word bueno. And in French, bon, as in bon appetit, eat good or eat well. Latin, you have the word manus. Now, in English, that just simply means hand. Spanish, it was mano, and French, man. Now, some people think if you hear the expression mano y mano, it means man to man. It actually means hand to hand. Can you think of something that we use our hands, or instructions rather, that tell us how to use our hands to make something that comes from the Latin word manus? That's right, manual. So we get lots of words from English, from the Latin. Let's look at our government. One of the biggest things we got from Romans was their idea of laws. The Romans wrote down their laws. They had 12 tables, so all the Romans could see their laws. What are our written laws called? That's right. We have a constitution. Americans have their laws written down just like the Romans. The Romans could see all theirs in the Forum. We have ours in Washington, D.C. Now, both Romans and Americans vote. We don't make all of our laws on a daily basis, so we vote for others to make them. As a result, both America and Rome were republics. We vote for our leaders to make laws for us. Branches of government. Rome had two councils. Today, we have a president and vice president. Each Rome and America today has a senate that make their laws. And we each have the judicial branch or judges to hear us. Two councils, president, vice president. Even our art and architecture is like the Romans. Now, the Romans did borrow from the Greeks, but we borrowed from both of them. In fact, our government buildings, like the U.S. Capitol building here, it's really similar to Rome's main forum and their Capitol building. We have similar arches, the roof designs are triangular often not, the stairs, the white marble look, and even concrete, which was a Roman invention. Anybody guess what building this is? That's right, it's the White House. Look at the columns. What type of columns are those? They're Ionic, going back to the Greeks, which the Romans borrowed, and we borrowed from both of them. Now, the Romans loved sports and entertainment. So do us Americans. The Romans built the Colosseum so they could watch all sorts of gladiator fighting. They also had the Circus Maximus, kind of like a track for their chariot racing. And the Romans also had theaters, very similar to our theater design, especially if you're talking about a movie theater with its stadium seating. Well, the Coliseum's not that different than our own Beaver Stadium. This is the Minneapolis Theater in Minnesota, just like the Roman design. And this is Indianapolis Motor Speedway, just like the Roman Circus Maximus. Now, the Romans made statues of their emperors. On the left, we have a statue of the Emperor Augustus and the Emperor Marcus Aurelius riding a horse. They wanted to be remembered. These heroic figures of theirs. So us Americans did the same thing too. Can anybody guess who that is riding on a horse? And not only where is he riding? Well, that's in Eakins Oval in Philadelphia. And that's President George Washington riding on a horse. This statue here, pretty weird looking. Is this a Roman? Is this a god? Who is this? Wait for it. That's right. It's President George Washington. We even made statues of our first president, looking like a Roman god, almost like Zeus or Jupiter above all. Now, paintings and murals. The Romans, they liked to paint things that they saw in nature. Birds, flowers, heck, even women and family members. Well, so do us Americans. We take pictures and paintings of birds and nature all the time. And this is, yes, that's Whistler's mother. People like to paint the same things. Sports, gladiator games, chariot racing, turning the entire Colosseum into a naval battle scene. Pretty cool, huh? Man, I wish we did things like that today. Well, we kind of do. We have horse racing, similar to chariot racing. NASCAR, heck, the greatest thing is waiting for a crash. Boxing, football players, those are America's gladiators today. Aqueducts. Well, the Romans were good, as we talked about, carrying things. They could carry water thousands of miles to their city when they used aqueducts. Well, all a duct is a carrier. Guys, we have them all throughout our house. We have air ducts and air conditioning. We just don't need to carry the water as far. We need that air to keep our house cool or hot. Roads. All roads lead to Rome. Well, guess what, guys? With their straight layers, their hard surface, America has created our very own interstate highway system. I-95. You can go all the way from Maine to Florida on one straight shoot. Well, the Romans were the original ancestors of it all. They took lots of time to build their roads. They paved them, they smoothed them, they made sure that it was flat, they cleared the trees away so no debris would fall. So do us Americans. We have the same exact ideas as the Romans. We start with crushed rock, we put layers and layers on, we tar it off. This is part of our legacy from the Romans. Why do we need these things? Well, it's the use. Trade, transportation, and believe it or not, military action. The president who created the interstate highway system was President Eisenhower, a former general, and he said it was important that we had roads so if we were ever attacked, we could get throughout the country as quick as possible with our army. Isn't it interesting that we actually made roads just like the Romans, initially for military protection, and then they helped with trade and transportation? So why are we so much like the Romans? Why do we want to be them? After all, they had some bad things. Well, we want to be a successful country. The Romans, at their time, were the most successful empire and country ever. We want to be considered civilized as they do. Well, let's copy what they do. If they make buildings in such a fashion, we'll make buildings in the same exact fashion. We share so many customs, words, habits. We borrow their language, and their rise, their success, and even failures are very similar to ours. Or are they? We'll talk more about this later. I hope you can see how the Romans are very much like us Americans today.